You know how they say spontaneity keeps a marriage alive? Well, I believed that. I really did. And that belief led me to one of the most humiliating, devastating, and ultimately liberating moments of my entire life. Let me tell you what happened when I decided to surprise my husband at work. My name is Nicole, and I'd been married to David for 8 years. 8 years of what I thought was a solid, happy marriage. We met in our late 20s, got married after dating for 2 years, and built what I believed was a beautiful life together. David worked as a senior manager at a tech company downtown. Long hours, stressful projects, but good money and, I thought, job security. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which meant I had flexibility in my schedule. Our arrangement worked well. I could manage my client work around our life, and David had the stability of a corporate job with benefits. We didn't have kids yet. We were waiting for the right time, but we had plans. God, we had so many plans. It was a Tuesday in October when everything fell apart. I remember the date exactly because it was our anniversary. 8 years. I'd been planning something special for weeks. David had told me he had back-to-back meetings all day and would probably have to work late, so we'd agreed to celebrate over the weekend instead. But I thought, why wait? Why not surprise him? I could bring lunch to his office. Maybe we could sneak away for an hour, make the day special despite his busy schedule. I was feeling romantic, nostalgic about our relationship. I wanted to remind him that even after 8 years, I still thought about him, still wanted to make him smile. So I got dressed up. Nothing too fancy, but nice. A navy blue dress he'd always complimented me in, heels, did my makeup carefully. I ordered lunch from his favorite Italian restaurant, the one where we'd had our first date. Chicken parmesan, garlic bread, tiramisu for dessert. I even bought a small bouquet of flowers and a card. I felt like I was in a romantic movie, you know? The devoted wife bringing lunch to her hard-working husband. I was actually excited, smiling to myself as I drove downtown. Traffic was terrible, but I didn't care. I put on our favorite playlist and sang along, thinking about how surprised he'd be. David's office building was one of those modern glass structures in the financial district. Very impressive, very corporate. I'd only been there a handful of times over the years, usually for company holiday parties or special events. David always said his workplace was boring, that there was no reason for me to come by, that he'd rather keep his work and home life separate. I respected that. I understood. I parked in the visitor's lot and walked into the lobby carrying my bags of food and flowers. The building was busy, people in suits rushing around, the atmosphere buzzing with that corporate energy. I felt a little out of place, but also proud. Proud to be there for my husband, to be doing something thoughtful. I walked up to the security desk in the lobby. There was a young woman there, maybe mid-20s, with a bright smile and a name tag that read Melissa. "Hi," I said, returning her smile. "I'm here to see David Parker. He's a senior manager on the 5th floor. I'm his wife." I wanted to surprise him with lunch. And that's when everything changed. Melissa's smile faltered. Just for a second, but I noticed it. This flicker of confusion crossed her face, and then something else. Something that looked almost like pity. "Oh," she said, drawing out the word. Let me call up to his floor and let them know you're here." "That's okay," I said, not picking up on the weird energy yet. "I want it to be a surprise. Can you just give me a visitor's badge? I know where his office is." Melissa shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, ma'am, I need to call up first. It's protocol for all visitors, even family." That should have been my first red flag. The way she said even family, like there was something she wasn't saying. But I was too caught up in my romantic surprise to pay attention. "Okay, sure," I said, still smiling. Melissa picked up her phone and dialed. I heard her say quietly, "Hi, this is the front desk. I have a woman here who says she's David Parker's wife. She wants to come up." There was a pause, and Melissa's eyes widened. Okay, I'll let her know." She hung up and looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "Someone's coming down to meet you. If you could just wait here for a moment. Is everything okay?" I asked, finally sensing that something was off. "Yes, of course," Melissa said quickly, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood there in the lobby, holding my bags, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. People walked past, giving me curious glances. A few minutes passed, though it felt longer. Then the elevator doors opened, and a woman stepped out. She was around my age, early 30s, dressed in a sharp business suit with her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked confident, professional, and there was something in her expression that made my stomach drop. She walked straight to me. "Hi," she said, her voice cool and measured. "I'm Jennifer. I work with David. I understand there's been some confusion. Confusion?" I repeated, completely lost. "I'm just here to bring my husband lunch. It's our anniversary." Jennifer's jaw tightened. She glanced at Melissa, then back at me. "I think we should talk somewhere private. There's a coffee shop next door. Would you mind?" My heart was pounding now. "What's going on? Where's David? I just want to see my husband." "Please," Jennifer said, and there was something in her tone, something gentle but firm, that scared me. "Just give me 5 minutes. Then you can do whatever you want." I don't know why I agreed. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, or the way Melissa was watching us with obvious discomfort, or the instinct that told me something was very, very wrong. But I nodded, and I followed Jennifer out of the building. We walked to the coffee shop in silence. Jennifer ordered 2 coffees without asking what I wanted and led me to a corner table away from other customers. I sat down, still clutching my bags, my mind racing with possibilities. Was David hurt? Was there an emergency? Why was this stranger being so cryptic? Jennifer sat across from me, took a deep breath, and said the words that shattered my world. "David has been telling everyone at work that I'm his wife." I stared at her. The words didn't make sense. They were sounds without meaning, like she'd spoken in a different language. "What?" I finally managed to say. "For the past 3 years," Jennifer continued, her voice steady but with an edge of anger underneath, "David Parker has been introducing me to colleagues, clients, and management as his wife. We've attended company events together, client dinners, conferences. His desk has photos of us. He wears a wedding ring that he told people I gave him. Everyone here believes I'm Mrs. Parker." I felt like I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. I'm his wife. We've been married for 8 years. Today is our anniversary." Jennifer pulled out her phone and started showing me pictures. Photos of her and David at company parties, him with his arm around her. Photos of them at what looked like a business conference, both wearing name tags, him looking at her with an expression I recognized because he used to look at me that way. Photos of them at dinner, raising glasses in a toast. "I had no idea he was actually married," Jennifer said, and I could hear the anger and hurt in her voice now. "I thought I was the only one. We've been dating for 3 years. He told me he loved me. He's been to my apartment, met my parents, talked about our future together." "Dating?" I whispered. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. "I found out yesterday," Jennifer said, "completely by accident. I needed to drop off some documents at his house, and he'd always told me he lived in a condo downtown. But I saw his actual address in his personnel file when I was pulling documents for an audit. A house in the suburbs. Your house, I'm assuming. So I did some digging. Found your social media. Your wedding photos. Everything." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known he was married, I would never. I'm not that kind of person." I was shaking. The coffee shop felt like it was tilting. "Where is he right now?" "In his office." I told him I saw someone claiming to be his wife at security, and that I was handling it. "He doesn't know I know the truth yet. I wanted to talk to you first, to figure out what's real." "This is real," I said, and tears were streaming down my face now. "I'm real. My marriage is real. Or at least, I thought it was." Jennifer reached across the table and took my hand. This woman, this stranger who'd been living a parallel life with my husband, was holding my hand while I fell apart. "What do you want to do?" she asked quietly. What did I want to do? I wanted to rewind time. I wanted this to not be happening. I wanted to go back to this morning when I was excitedly planning a surprise lunch, when my biggest concern was traffic. But that wasn't an option. So instead, I made a decision. "I want to go up there," I said, wiping my eyes. "I want to see him. I want him to look me in the face and explain this." Jennifer nodded. "I'll come with you. We'll do this together." And we did. We walked back to that building, these 2 women who should have been enemies but instead had become unlikely allies. Melissa's eyes went wide when she saw us coming back together, and she buzzed us through without a word. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was silent. Jennifer stood beside me, her jaw set, her hands clenched into fists. I still had my bags of food and flowers, and there was something absurdly tragic about that. The anniversary lunch I'd so carefully planned, now a prop in this nightmare. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into a typical corporate office space. Cubicles, glass-walled offices, the hum of computers and quiet conversations. A few people looked up as we walked past, and I saw recognition in their eyes as they looked at Jennifer. She belonged here. I was the stranger. Jennifer led me to a corner office with David's name on the door. Through the glass wall, I could see him at his desk, on the phone, laughing at something. He looked so normal, so much like the David the first D kissed goodbye that morning. How could he sit there looking so calm, so ordinary, when he'd been living this insane double life? Jennifer didn't knock. She opened the door and walked in, and I followed. David looked up, smiled at Jennifer, then saw me. And I watched his face change. I watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his eyes go wide with panic, watched him fumble the phone and nearly drop it. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, his voice strained. He hung up and stood up, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. "Nicole, what? What are you doing here?" "Surprising my husband with anniversary lunch," I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. "You remember, right? Our anniversary? 8 years today?" He glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out what I knew, what Jennifer knew, how he could possibly talk his way out of this. "And I'm here," Jennifer said, her voice cold, "because apparently I'm also your wife. At least, that's what everyone in this office thinks. That's what you've told everyone for 3 years. David sat back down heavily in his chair. He looked between us, and for a moment, I thought he might try to deny it, to spin some elaborate lie. But maybe he could see from our faces that it was over, that we both knew. Instead, he just put his head in his hands. "How could you?" I asked, and my voice broke. "How could you do this to me? To us?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said. And even though I'd known him for a decade, I realized I was hearing a stranger speak. It started as a lie at work, and then it got bigger, and I didn't know how to stop it. "You're unbelievable," Jennifer said. "You didn't know how to stop lying? You could have told the truth at any point. You chose not to. Who else knows?" I asked. "Who else has been lying to me?" David looked up, his eyes red. "No one. I kept both lives completely separate. My family doesn't know about Jennifer. People at work don't know about you. Except now we do," Jennifer said. "Now everyone's going to know." And she was right. By the end of that day, everyone knew. People started gathering outside David's office, whispering, staring at us through the glass. Someone must have called HR because a representative showed up within 20 minutes, looking stressed and confused. I stayed for all of it. I wanted to watch his life unravel the way mine had. Jennifer stayed too, and together we told the full story to his boss, to HR, to anyone who asked. David tried to minimize it, to make excuses, but the evidence was overwhelming. The photos, the company event records where he'd listed Jennifer as his +1, the insurance forms where he'd claimed different marital statuses on different documents. The company launched an investigation immediately. It turned out David had been falsifying some expense reports, claiming reimbursements for business dinners with clients that were actually dates with Jennifer. He'd used company funds for weekend trips he'd told me were work conferences. The lies went deeper than any of us had realized. I left that office building 3 hours after I'd arrived. I left without my husband, without my marriage, but with something else. I left with Jennifer's phone number, with the contact information for a ruthless divorce lawyer she recommended, and with a sense of clarity I hadn't had in years. The divorce was ugly but quick. David's lies at work resulted in his termination, which meant he couldn't afford to fight me on the settlement. The house, the savings, most of our assets came to me. He was also facing potential charges for expense fraud, though he eventually took a plea deal. Jennifer and I didn't become best friends or anything like that. How could we? We'd been betrayed by the same man in different ways, but we stayed in touch. We testified together in the divorce proceedings. We supported each other through the hardest parts of moving on. She told me that she'd broken up with David immediately that day in his office. She said she felt like she'd been dating a ghost, a fiction. The man she thought she knew didn't exist. I understood that feeling completely. The most surreal part was learning about all the little details of his double life. Jennifer told me things about her David that were so different from the David the first knew. He'd told her he was an only child, when he actually had 2 siblings. He'd said he hated sushi, when he and I ate it all the time. He'd claimed to be allergic to cats, yet we had 2 at home. It was like he'd created an entirely different persona for his work life, and I couldn't figure out why. Was he trying to escape our marriage? Was he just a pathological liar who got off on the deception? To this day, I still don't fully understand his motivation. What I do know is that I'm better off without him. It took time to see that clearly. In the immediate aftermath, I was devastated. I questioned everything about our relationship. I wondered if he'd ever really loved me, if any of it had been real. But gradually, I started to heal. I threw myself into my work and actually expanded my business. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with over the years. I went to therapy and worked through the betrayal and trust issues. I learned to be alone without being lonely. And then, about a year after the divorce was finalized, something unexpected happened. I met someone. His name is Marcus, and he's a photographer. We met at a coffee shop, completely by chance. He was photographing the interior for a magazine feature, and I was working on my laptop. We started talking, and he asked me out. I almost said no. I almost let my past with David ruin my future. But something made me say yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was hope. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I could trust again. Marcus is nothing like David. He's open, honest to a fault sometimes. He tells me about his day, his feelings, his fears. He doesn't have a secret work life or a hidden persona. He's just real. Authentically, sometimes messily, beautifully real. We took things slow. I was upfront about my past, about the baggage I was carrying. He listened without judgment. He never tried to rush me or push me into anything I wasn't ready for. And slowly, carefully, I let myself fall in love again. We've been together for 6 months now, and I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way I'm not sure I ever was with David. Because this time, I'm not living in a fantasy or a lie. I'm living in reality, with someone who values truth and communication. I still think about that day sometimes. That Tuesday in October, when I walked into David's office building with lunch and flowers, excited to surprise my husband. I think about how naive I was, how completely blindsided. And I feel sad for that version of me, for what she didn't know was coming. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that the truth came out when it did, before I wasted any more years on a lie. Grateful for Jennifer, who could have been cruel but chose to be kind. Grateful for the strength I found in myself when everything fell apart. People ask me if there were signs I missed. Looking back, maybe there were. The way David was always vague about his coworkers, how he never wanted me to drop by his office, the work trips that seemed frequent. But at the time, I trusted him. I had no reason not to. And I don't think that trust was a weakness. His deception was the problem, not my faith in our marriage. I also learned something important. You can't control other people's choices. You can only control how you respond to them. David chose to lie, to build an elaborate double life. I chose to face the truth head-on, to rebuild, to stay open to love despite being hurt. My advice to anyone watching this, anyone who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags because you want to believe everything's fine. And if you discover you've been betrayed, remember that it's not your fault. Someone else's lies don't reflect on your worth. Also, and this is important, don't let one person's betrayal close you off to everyone else. I almost did that. I almost decided that all men were liars, that relationships weren't worth the risk. But that would have meant David's lies won, that his deception controlled my future, and I refused to give him that power. So here I am, 2 years later. I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who respects me. I have a thriving business. I have genuine friendships. I have a life that's mine, built on truth and authenticity. And none of that would have happened if I hadn't walked into that office building on what I thought would be a simple lunch surprise. Life is strange. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. Sometimes the truth, even when it's devastating, is exactly what you need to set you free. I wanted to surprise my husband at his workplace. At the entrance, I learned he had a wife. And that horrible, shocking, humiliating discovery, it was the beginning of my real life. The life where I knew the truth. The life where I wasn't living a lie. And that, honestly, is the greatest gift that terrible day gave me. The gift of knowing. The gift of clarity. The gift of a second chance to build something real. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who might be questioning their own relationship. Who might be seeing red flags they're afraid to acknowledge. Listen to your gut. Seek the truth. And remember, You deserve someone who's proud to call you their wife or husband, not just in private, but everywhere, always.